Hi guys, welcome to Code Patcher, and in this video I will discuss eloquent relationships. Okay, so generally in database tables are related to each other using the foreign key constants, and we have the related data for one table in another table. Like blog post may have many comments, or a use or an order is related to the user which is placed by it. Okay, so like these data we have a relationship in our database. So relationship can be many types, like one-to-one relationships, one to many, or many to many. Okay, but in this video I will discuss only one-to-one relationships, one-to-one relationship. Okay, so for this I will take an example for the users and phones tables. So each user will have one phone number. Okay, this will be called a one-to-one relationship. So the parent table will be the users table, because it has the id field which relates the phones table user id field. Okay, so in this scenario phones table will be a child table, and users table will be a parent table. Okay, so every user has a single record in the phones table, and to implement this scenario in the eloquent way, in the Laravel, Eloquent provides the relationship methods. Okay, so if we are not using eloquent relationships. Okay, so if we are not using the eloquent relationship, we need to fetch the record separately for the user's phones. Let's take an example for this. So we so I have a related model to users.php and phone.php. The phone.php I have nothing done any code. Okay, so let's fetch out the user first to justify our implementation. Like users. So let's fetch all the users. Okay, now if we refresh, uh, we have all the users. Okay, but don't have their phone numbers. Okay, for fetching the phone number, we need to fetch the records from the phones tables, from the phones model also in the eloquent way. But using that the ugly method, it is not eloquent way. It will not be eloquent way. To use it in eloquent way, we need to define the eloquent relationship. So in the users table, in the parents table, because we need the phone records of every users, we are defining the here here the eloquent relationship method phone. Okay, this method name can be anything you want. Okay, but for the sake of the for the convention, uh, we are using the same method name as the model name. Okay, and in this method, return, we will use the has one method of eloquent. Okay, and in the has one, uh, we need to pass the child class. like this. Okay, so understand it in this way. Every user has one phone. Okay, and now when we query, we can use the with method to fetch the phone records by default in the query. Now if we refresh, we have the phone record as well. As you can see, ID with the ID 9, we don't have any phone record, then it will be null. Okay. If you don't want the phone records by default, okay, so you can fetch it the runtime. Like let's say for the first record, I want the phone record with the user ID 4. As you can see, we will have this record now, like this. Okay, so you can see clearly how it seems simple to fetch the associated record using the eloquent relationship. Otherwise, you need to fetch it with some ugly, from you can say redundant code. Okay. So in this relationship, you can customize the keys also, like uh, for the current relations, we have a user ID field which relates the ID field of the user's family key. Okay, but in some scenario, for example, if we have the UID field, okay, by default, Eloquent uses the model name underscore its ID field for the foreign key column. Okay, and but if we have the different column name, like let's say UID here, so let's change it here, alter the phones table, and make it the UID. Okay, and apply. Okay, so we can mention this change here, the second parameter. Okay, so define the UID here, and now if we refresh it, we have the same record. Okay, so Laravel uses the model parent model name underscore ID by default, but if we don't have this pattern foreign key, then you can define your foreign key as the second parameter here as well. Okay. In some scenarios, we don't have the ID field of the parent table, but having the different primary key, like uh, here in the users table. Currently, we have a ID primary key, but if we have the different primary key name, like you can say, you say SID. Okay. So you can pass it as a third parameter as well. Okay, like this, it is still working. So the second parameter will be the foreign key, okay, and the third parameter will be the primary key of the parent table. Okay. So So let's reverse the scenario. When if we want to fetch the users of related phone numbers. So when we are fetching the phone number, we want the related users also. So to define this inverse relation, we call it the inverse relation and define it in the child table. So in this case, we define the inverse relation in the phones table, phones model, sorry. So it will also be a public function, okay, and has the eloquent relationship method, okay, and every phone number now belongs to some user. So we will use the belongs to in the child table and pass a parent table like this. Okay. And now let's comment it out and fetch the phones. Okay. And we'll use with, okay, and the relationship method name and return the phones. And now just refresh it. Uh, we have all the phone number records, but we don't have any user associated with it because Laravel assuming that the foreign key will be the user ID because it for the by the convention it uses the user ID field. Okay, but we have already changed it with the user ID field to the UID field here in the phones table. So we need to mention the second parameter as a foreign key as we did in the users model, like here UID, and the primary key of the owner of the parent table as the SID because we have changed it from the ID to SID. So we need to mention it here also, UID and SID. And now if we refresh, we will have our related user, our associated user with the phone number records. Okay. Likewise, if we don't want to load the user records with the phones, you can fetch it later like this. Okay. For the first record, we will have this user. Okay. So that's all for the one-to-one relationship. Uh, I suppose I have explained well, but if you have any question, then let's ask it so I can improve my illustrations in further videos. Okay, thank you so much for watching us.